fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty hi-yo silver, the Lone Ranger. With his faithful Indian companion Tonto, the daring and resourceful masked rider of the plains led the fight for law and order in the early western United States. Nowhere in the pages of history can one find a greater champion of justice. Return with us now to those thrilling days of yesteryear. From out of the past come the thundering hoofbeats of the great horse Silver. The Lone Ranger rides again.
Come on, Silver. Let's go, big fella. I'll Silver. Aye!
The Circle Bar was one of the biggest ranches in the territory. Owned by a Chicago syndicate, it was managed by Tom Dorn. Dorn had been to the nearby town of Gold Creek. During the return trip, his face was set in a deep frown. Jake Rucker, the ranch foreman who stood near the corral when he rode in, wondered what was wrong.
Oh, easy. Boss, you look like a thunderstorm ready to bust wide open. Is anything wrong?
Yes, plenty. There's a letter waiting for me in town. It's from the syndicate. An accountant is on his way.
Oh. Are the big wigs suspicious of us?
There's no suspicion now, but there'll be plenty when that accountant goes over the books in the office.
Well, I didn't know you'd stolen cash as well as cattle.
How'd you think I bought the 8-box ranch?
Well, I didn't think about it.
We had to have a place to send the stolen cattle. A place where we could run a new brand over the Circle Bar and hold the critters until the fresh brand's healed over. I used company cash to buy that ranch in the valley.
Gosh, boss, you might have known this shortage of cash would be found out sooner or later.
I figured on replacing the cash when we sold the rustled cattle.
Well, then we're all right. We'll run the cattle north, sell it to the Indian agency. We'll get the cash.
That'll take time. We can't do it before Bates, the accountant, arrives. Now, there's just one way out of this, Jake. I don't like murder, but...
Murder?
Bates will have to be killed on the way from town.
Boss, just who do you think is going to do the job?
You and Sam Collins.
Not by a jugful. Maybe Sam's fool enough to do a thing like that, but you better count me out.
Get Sam. Bring him to the ranch house. By the time you get there, I'll have something worked out.
An hour later, when Jake Rucker and one of the cowhands named Sam Collins entered the ranch house, Tom Dorn wore an expression of smug satisfaction.
Sit down, boys, and stop looking worried.
We got plenty cause to worry.
Yeah, Jake's been talking to you, huh, Sam?
I told him what you told me.
And it stacks up just this way, boss. The three of us will go to jail for cattle stealing unless we kill that accountant. And if we kill a man, we'll hang.
Not unless we're proved guilty. Now, boys, I have a plan that's foolproof. There's not a thing to worry about.
I wish I could be sure of that.
I got the idea from an item in this newspaper. It tells about the Martin brothers breaking out of jail.
Who are the Martin brothers?
Crooks. They were arrested for cattle stealing in Bryant's Gap 5 years ago. I was a witness against them, so they swore to get square with me. Well, that's what they'll try to do.
Well, how do you figure?
At least as far as the sheriff is concerned.
The sheriff?
Yes. I'll show him this piece in the paper and tell him about the Martins' threat. And I'll persuade him to ride back here in the buckboard with Bates and me. You two will be waiting in ambush at the foot of the hill near Crystal Spring. Wear different clothes and cover your faces with bandanas. When we stop to water the horses, shoot Ned Bates and ride away.
Why, the sheriff will shoot at us.
Leave him to me. I'll have him beside me on the seat, and I'll be in his line of fire. I'll act confused and interfere with his gun hand so you'll have plenty of time to get out of sight in the ravine. You'll have less than 100 yards to ride.
He'll have his horse. He'll chase us.
The horse will be tied behind the wagon. I'll tie it myself and make a tight knot. You'll have plenty of time to get away.
Yeah, then what?
The ravine's a shortcut back here. You'll be here with your clothes changed when we arrive. The sheriff will be dead sure that the Martin brothers fired at me and hit Bates by mistake.
The next day, Tom Dorn went into town to meet the stagecoach from the east. But before going to the station, he called on Sheriff Hawkins, whose office was directly across the street.
Good morning, Sheriff.
Well, glad to see you, Dawn. Sit down.
Thanks.
I heard you were in town yesterday. Didn't expect you to be back so soon.
A man from the syndicate is arriving on the stage. I'm here to meet him and take him to the ranch.
So that's it. I saw you tying up at the hitch rail and wondered why you brought a buckboard instead of a saddle horse.
Sheriff, I'd appreciate it if you'd ride back with us. Or send a deputy.
Why?
Because of the Martin brothers.
Huh?
Did you see the piece about them in yesterday's paper?
Yes, I read it, but I didn't think much about it. I figured those crooks wouldn't show up in these parts. They'd head south for the border.
Oh, you're wrong, Sheriff. I saw them.
You did? Sakes alive, where are they? How'd you know 'em?
I was a witness against them at their trial, and they swore to get me. That's why they came to these parts.
I'd like to catch those crooks. It'd be a feather in my cap.
And that's why I suggested that you ride back to the ranch with us. I'll show you where I spotted them.
I'll do it.
The stage arrived on schedule, and Ned Bates was on board. Dorn introduced himself and the sheriff, and a few minutes later, the three men were riding toward the Circle Bar Ranch in Dorn's buckboard. The sheriff's horse was tied behind a light wagon. During the ride, the ranch manager explained the presence of the sheriff by telling about the Martin brothers. Then Ned Bates said,
Well, Mr. Dorn, I certainly hope we don't meet those outlaws.
Where's the place you saw 'em, Dawn?
The other side of Crystal Spring. I'll show you when we get there.
Where is Crystal Spring?
It's in this valley, just about a mile ahead. Come on. Yep. Get up.
Meanwhile, the Lone Ranger and Tonto were heading toward Crystal Spring to water their horses and fill their canteens. As they reached the crest of a hill that overlooked the valley, the masked man signaled a halt.
Old fella. What matter, Kimasabi?
Look, over there, a buckboard. Well, over this way, so we'll be partly screened by the brush. Come on, Silver.
Come, Scout. Come, fella.
Oh, Silver.
Oh, Scout. Oh, fella. Kimasabi,
Yes?
look down there. Near foot of hill. Two fella crouched behind big rock.
Yes, I see them.
Horses hidden behind other rock.
One of those men has a rifle. Easy, steady, big fella. Come on, Tonto.
And what we do?
That might be an ambush. We'll close in on those men and find out why they're hiding.
Unaware that they had been seen from above, Jake and Sam, wearing old black suits and battered black hats, crouched in their hiding place and peered over the boulder at the light wagon approaching Crystal Spring. Dorn and the sheriff were on the seat, and Ned Bates sat on his suitcase, placed on the wagon floor behind the seat.
Tie the bandana over your face, Sam.
Right. And Dorn's kept his word. See how he's arranged the seating? He's between us and the sheriff. He'll be able to interfere plenty if the sheriff tries to get his gun clear for a shot at us.
Yeah.
And Bates is like a sitting duck. You can't miss.
Soon as I fire my rifle, jump for your horse and head for the ravine.
I know. The wagon's stopping.
All right, get set. I'm taking aim.
Don't fire.
Behind us.
Hey!
Drop that gun.
All right, don't shoot.
What's going on up there?
You better come and find out. You two, stand still. Watch them, Tonto.
Me watch him.
The smashed rifle lay on the ground, and Jake and Sam stood with hands raised, facing the Lone Ranger and Tonto. The sheriff came uphill on the run, with Dorn and Ned Bates at his heels. Bates was alive only because the masked man's shot, fired at the instant the ambusher's trigger finger tightened, had caused Jake to miss his mark by inches. His bullet had drilled Ned Bates' hat instead of his head.
All right, Dawn. You cover the men with the bandanas. I'll deal with these two. Drop your guns, mister. You too, Injun.
We'll holster them, Sheriff.
Yeah, that mask.
First, you'd better question those two. We saw them hiding behind that rock. One of them was sighting a rifle.
Now, wait. These men are all right. Take off the bandanas, boys.
But Dorn, the sheriff said to keep them covered.
Not necessary. They're friends.
Huh?
Jake Rucker and Sam Collins. You've seen them around town, Sheriff.
Yeah.
They're both from the Circle Bar.
Someone shot a hole through my hat.
That man did it. I smashed his rifle with a bullet, but not before he fired.
You had no business smashing his rifle. He wasn't going to hurt anyone. Sheriff, Jake and Sam were here as a joke.
A joke?
The curtain falls on the first act of our Lone Ranger adventure. Before the next exciting scenes, please permit us to pause for just a few moments. Now to continue. The sheriff's face was expressionless. He was sure Dorn's explanation was a cover for the two employees, and that the masked man and the Indian had in some way interfered with their plans. His first impulse was to challenge Dorn's statement. Then he realized that a challenge might bring a showdown, and if his suspicions were correct, he'd face heavy odds. He didn't know that the masked man had the same idea. He didn't know where the masked man and the Indian stood, but he did know that Dorn, Jake, and Sam would be teamed against him. The situation called for caution.
You say it was a joke?
That's right. Sort of hazing for the tenderfoot.
What? You mean me?
Yes. No offense meant, Bates, but you are a tenderfoot.
Are you from the East, Bates?
From Chicago. I'm going to the ranch to check the records. I'm an accountant.
I see.
The boys thought it would be fun to dress as road agents, fire a few shots, and ride in and hold us up. A fake holdup, you see.
Sure, that's right. We were going to stage a fake holdup. It was all in fun.
You aimed mighty close to that man's head.
Oh, I wasn't aiming at his head at all. I fired at the ground this side of him. Bullet must have hit a rock and ricocheted through his hat. In fact, I heard it ricochet.
So did I, didn't you, Sheriff?
Well, no, I can't say it did.
I admit you had a narrow escape, Bates, and I'm sorry. The boys didn't mean any harm.
But, Dorn, what about the Martin brothers? You said they were around here gunning for you. Was that story a part of my hazing?
Oh, no. That was the truth. Jake, you and Sam were with me when we saw the Martins at the edge of Pine Woods.
Yeah, we were there, boss.
I'm going to show the sheriff where they entered the woods. He'll come back with a posse and search for them. Why, you boys might as well ride with us now that the joke misfired.
Just a minute, Dorn. I'm curious about this masked man.
And, Sheriff, I'm curious about a lot of things. Come on, Tonto. We left our horses at the top of the hill, Sheriff.
Hold on. You're not leaving yet.
To stop us, you'll have to shoot us in the back.
Well, they're leaving.
Stop and make them pay for smashing my rifle.
I'll stop them if they want
Steady, Dorn. Put away your gun.
But, Sheriff...
Let him go.
Well, what about my rifle?
Jake, if I'd have been in that masked man's place, I'd have done the same thing he did. Let's get on our way.
On the hilltop, the Lone Ranger and Tonto stood beside their horses, watching Tom Dorn and his party continue the journey toward the Circle Bar. Presently, the masked man spoke.
He might have made an honest mistake, Tonto. He might have seen two men and thought they were the Martins, but I doubt it.
And what we do?
We'll watch for a chance to talk to Bates alone.
Dorn showed the sheriff a place on the trail near Pine Woods where the Martin brothers were supposed to have been seen. The lawman studied the ground, then marked the place and said,
Can't make out any tracks, but then I'm no good at that sort of thing. I'll come back here with men who are good at cutting sign.
That night, the ranch office, which occupied part of the commissary building, was brightly lighted. Ned Bates was there, beginning work on the books. In the ranch house, Tom Dorn conferred with Jake and Sam.
You mean to say he's working on the books?
Yes.
Well, it won't take him long to discover the shortage.
That's why we must act tonight. We'll wait here until we're sure all the men in the bunkhouse are asleep. Then we'll go to the office where Bates is working.
Meanwhile, the Lone Ranger waited with Scout and Silver in a small clump of cottonwoods about 100 yards from the commissary building. Tonto approached on foot.
What did you learn, Tonto?
Bates, working office. Me see him through window.
Is he alone?
Him alone. You go there now?
No, I don't want someone to look through the window and see me talking to Bates. We'll wait here until he stops work. When we see the lights go out, we'll go to meet him on his way to the ranch house.
The masked man and Tonto waited patiently, watching the lighted window of the office at one end of the commissary building. The rest of the long building and the ranch house were wholly concealed by the absolute darkness of the night. At midnight, Dorn left the ranch house with Jake and Sam. Unseen by the Lone Ranger and Tonto, they walked through the darkness to the end of the commissary and entered the dark building.
Close the door.
All right, Dorn. How about a light to see our way through this commissary?
No, some kind might see a light in the window and get curious. Feel your way along.
The office is lighted?
There's reason for that to be lighted. This part of the building is different. Yeah. Now we're almost at the door. Yeah, here it is.
Oh, hello, Dorn.
Still working, huh?
Yes, I didn't know you three were in the commissary. I thought you'd gone to bed.
I see you've been counting the cash.
Yes.
Anything wrong?
Well, I'm not sure. There seems to be a big shortage in the cash. I'll have to check more thoroughly to be sure.
No,
but
you
I-
won't.
Huh?
There is a shortage. $10,000.
Dorn, what are you going to do with that gun?
Sorry, Bates, but I don't want to go to jail.
You stole the money. And these two
I
men
hate to
must...
do this.
Oh.
Good work, boss.
Grab him. I got him. Ease him down into the chair. That's it. Now lower his head and shoulders to the desk so it'll look like he fell asleep over his work.
How's this?
That's fine.
Boss, maybe you killed him. You slugged him awful hard with your gun.
He's alive. I can feel his heart.
Doesn't matter, as long as he stays unconscious until the fire finishes him off. I'll just move his arm to the side of the desk. It'll look like he brushed the lamp into the wastebasket while he was asleep.
No one can prove different.
Here goes the lamp.
Right into the wastebasket.
Let's catch it fire.
We'll go back and wait close to the house until this part of the building's blazing high. Then we'll sound the fire alarm.
The three crooks again made their way through the dark part of the building. And as the Lone Ranger and Tonto were about to leave the woods, the masked man placed a hand on Tonto's arm.
Oh, wait, Tonto. Look at the window.
It's dark now. Bates quit work.
There's a light of some kind in that office. A flickering light. Watch.
As the flames fed on loose paper, the light in the window increased until there could be no doubt as to what was happening.
Tonto, it's a fire. Come on.
The two men running toward the office end of the building couldn't see Dorn and his companions as they left in the dark from the opposite end and hurried toward the ranch house. Meanwhile, the fire grew fast. The flames reached the dry wood of the wall and the desk, and the papers piled upon it. The Lone Ranger and Tonto found the office door unlocked.
Look, Kimasabi. Bates, unconscious.
I'll get him, Tonto. You take those books on the desk. Save all the papers you can.
He's having.
Many loose papers on the desk were burning. Tonto slapped at them with bare hands, beating out the fire to salvage all he could. The Lone Ranger pulled Bates back from the immediate peril, then took time to feel for a pulse.
He's alive.
Not good.
There's a bad bruise on his head, though.
You carry him.
Yes, I'll manage.
He got books, papers.
Let's get out of here, then.
Tom Dorn and his partners stood in the darkness close to the house. They saw glass shattered at the windows at the far end of the commissary building. Then flames leaped out.
We'll let it go a little longer before we sound the alarm.
Yeah. Just as well to be sure Bates died.
Hey, boss, look. Those men coming around the far end of the building.
What?
And one of them is carrying Bates.
The masked man and Indian.
They've rescued Bates.
Get your gun, shoot him.
But gunfire will arouse the boys in the
I'll
bunkhouse.
say the masked man started the fire. Come on, move close so we don't miss.
Drop those guns.
Yes, sheriff.
And I'm not alone. My deputies are here with me.
Let him have it.
Oh, my arm!
I'll do as you say and drop those guns.
You heard the sheriff.
Don't shoot, Sheriff. Get that masked man. He started the fire.
Tell that to the judge, you murdering polecat.
It was half an hour before Ned Bates was able to sit up and talk. Dorn, Jake, and Sam were on chairs near the wall, and their hands were tied. Two deputies watched them closely. The sheriff was in the room, and so was the tall masked man. The masked man said,
You'll be all right, Bates.
Well, I remember finding a shortage of cash then, and Dawn slugged me.
That's not all. He started a fire to kill you and to burn the records.
He stole money.
Money and cattle. His partners were willing to talk, so they spilled everything.
Oh, you said there was a fire, Sheriff.
The office burned, but the cowhands saved the rest of the building. The masked man saved you alive.
Tonto and I thought Dorn was up to something.
Oh, you did, eh?
Yes. You see, Sheriff, we were sure that these two men were in ambush to kill the accountant.
Because of the way the bullet drilled Bates' hat?
Yes. We came here hoping for the chance to talk to Bates. That's why we were on hand when the fire was started.
Yeah.
You must have me. Horses here.
All right, Tonto. Sheriff, there's just one question I'd like to ask you.
Fire away.
How did it happen that you were near the house with your deputies?
I figured the same as you did, mister. I knew that bullet hadn't ricocheted. I wanted to question Dorn this afternoon, but I was alone. And he had two potential killers with him, so I played along. Then came here tonight with deputies. We were near the house when he and his pals were getting set to gun you.
Thanks, that answers my question.
Yeah.
Looks like you and I figured things the same way. Adios.
Adios to you. Well, boys, take the crooks to town and lock 'em up. I'll stay here with Bates until you send the doc back with a wagon.
I still don't see why the masked man did so much for me.
Because, Bates, he's on the right side of the law. He smashes crooks wherever he can find them. He's the Lone Ranger.
This is a feature of the Lone Ranger Incorporated, created by George W. Trendle, produced by Trendle Campbell Muir Incorporated, and directed by Charles D. Livingston. Tonight's drama was written by Fran Stryker. The part of the Lone Ranger is played by Brace Beamer.